Well, I've always been an adult entertainer, really, ever since I stopped playing drums and started telling dirty jokes. And I've always had to clean up for television rather than blew up for live. And I've always had quite a good live act. Causes problems if it gets misquoted a lot in the newspapers. I think people come and see me because they know they're going to get something they don't see on the television. And then when I do television stuff, I try and keep it sort of squeaky cleany. Well, the Generation Game was good fun because I could be a clown and entertain children without having to be filthy or swear or whatever.
But the great thing about the Generation Game, again, is that the adults liked it. I mean, it was hugely popular with all generations. I mean, where do you find that you are most at home? What do you enjoy doing the most? Is it the rude stuff with the adult audiences?
I actually enjoyed the Generation Game the most because you didn't have to think about material. You could just there be a clown, really, and have a bit of a laugh. I think the trick to doing what I do, where I sort of have a multi-purpose act, if you want, I can drop in every little bit, is to get the public to trust you. They know that when they come and see me, the ticket they're buying is really a cheque, that I'll cash later for them. And the fact that if they come and see a panto, because I say it's family entertainment, they'll know it's not going to be rude. And it's taken a while to establish that's the way I do things now.
Did that take you a long time to develop? Because again, I can't think of another person in entertainment who's able to distinguish between the absolute crude and rude stuff that you do on stage to the fun family entertainment that you do on the likes of the Generation Game.
We don't get newsreaders swearing much, do you?
Yeah, but they're not funny either, though, are they? That is their skill. Their skill is reading.
Yeah, but people make the mistake of saying, oh, how can you tell which one's which? Don't you forget you're doing a panto and get filthy? Well, no, actually, you run the filthy things through in your mind. There's always something you wanted to tell Cinderella. That was why that's why I put the mucky Cinderella together, the mucky pantos. I did Cinderella first. That was 10 years ago now, and then that was on video. And then Boobs in the Wood, which was the Robin Hood story. And Cinderella, I'm going to do again live next year. And then another one, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which, funnily enough, I'll be doing with Leah Christensen from the Generation Game. It'll be the first time we worked together in a year and a half.
Now, Cinderella's going to be touring next year. Is that going to come up and down the country, or are you going to keep it in one theatre?
We're only going to go... No, it will tour around, but it'll only go to theatres that's big enough to take it. It's quite a big production. If it was a little sort of town hall production of Cinderella, then it would look tacky, but this is quite lavish, so you can then be filthy because you've got that bedrock of glamour.
The thing I really love about your shows is that you don't just turn up and talk on the microphone like a lot of comedians do. You actually bring a band with you, and you have lighting and you have a set. Is that important to you to have that big production opposed to just a normal show, if you like?
Well, I haven't got the band this time, but we're still using sound and a little bit of lighting and a bit of a few tricks. But when I toured the band before, I decided, although I don't sing very well and I don't going to do anything really serious, best to take your own PA and lights and everything. But then that ended up as two 30-ton trucks, two 45-footers, and then we had to take our own caterers. There were 28 of us on the road at the time, and I think it was like $90,000 a week to stage the show. There wasn't a great deal left for me. So now, what I'm doing now, this one's called Vote for Jim, where I'm going to... Funny enough, I was telling Michael Howard last night, the new Conservative leader. He said, how's the Vote for Jim tour doing? I said, great. He said, you're not serious, are you? Surely. I said, no, not really, no. Your job don't pay enough, mate. I said to him, all this is what I would do if I was Prime Minister. Some of it's tongue-in-cheek, but some of it has a point.
I have great admiration for people like yourself who can just stand up anywhere in any room, and as long as people can hear you, that's enough. Because you don't need a set, you don't need lighting, you don't need any of the things we just mentioned, because your core product is just what you say. Now, what fascinates me about that is the fact that it's unscripted and you just talk every night. So, A, when did you get the confidence to do that? And B, because it's not scripted, is it different every night?
It's not that different. There can be. Sometimes I tell myself that I'm going to go on and not do anything I've ever spoke about before, and that's quite interesting. But you've got to have the audience go with you with that. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always been a bit of a show-off. And funny enough, I learnt about that when I was in the alcoholics clinic, where they said to you, well, you know, really, it's obvious you were going to become a comedian because you just want to be the centre of attention all the time, and you have such a grandiose lifestyle, you know, 4 wives in houses you can't afford. It's the perfect job for you, getting the adoration off of everybody.
One thing that I'll never understand about comedians is the fact that you seem to love fear. You love putting yourself in danger where an audience is sat there growling at you and they're not laughing, yet you're going to tell another joke that might get the laugh. If that doesn't, you'll try again and again and again. I do radio because I don't have people booing and hissing at me. They just switch me off. I can't see any instant reaction. You see, all of that would just terrify me. Firstly, do you still have bad audiences even when you're as famous as you are?
Oh yeah, you have a few drunks and that. Overexcitement it is with them and me. They've been drinking on most of the day, or they've been taking whatever substances they take to come and see me, and they get a bit carried away and join in, and a bit flash, and so I always get someone to ask them to belt up.
Can you tell me any of your put-down lines? Because they're my favourite.
I don't do them.
You don't bother?
No, not really, because I think that just encourages the hecklers. But I think the good old put-down lines are the ones you just make up. They come off the top of your head. And the audience can sniff something that you've done before anyway. The other night I had to walk off stage and go and wait in the wings. The first 5 minutes in the act, and this guy and his missus down in Dartford shouting and screaming and hollering, and I just said, what's the matter? He was just hollering and shouting. So someone asked him to shut up, and he shouted back at them, and the audience was shouting at him. So I said, listen, I'm going to go in the wings and let you lot sort it out. And in the end, he left. His wife was all abusive, and they've just got a bit drunk and carried away.
I can't imagine a more scary feeling when you're starting out in your career and nobody knows you, because when you're as famous as you are, people either are going to love you or not come. Because I mean,
you're right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I can't imagine being in a pub and stood on stage trying to tell jokes that to you are funny, but to the rest of the audience they don't get. Whether they're funny or not is neither here nor there. Some audiences just aren't born to laugh. How do you turn them around, and how do you cope with that?
Well, it's been such a while now. The fundamentals of comedy is they've got to see you, they've got to hear you, and they mustn't be too drunk. They mustn't have their own agenda. They've got to be an audience. Funnily enough, these comedy stores that the young lads go and do now, they're dead easy peasy, because they're there to have comedy. And so, but if you turn up to do the Bert Smith's Amalgamated Engineering Union's Christmas booze up, and they're all drunk and not listening to you, then you've had it. I always go home after a couple of minutes. I did one at some double glazing company. I walked in, 5 minutes of it, they're all shouting and arguing and walking around. I said, I'm going, bye. The man came in, well, you can't do that. I'm going to pay you a lot of money. I said, I'll keep it, mate. I'm a comic. I'm not a prostitute.
What I find fascinating about the observational comedians like yourself is that you just pick up stuff that is really funny every single day. And most people can't do that. We can't see the funny side of life. Do you walk around all day just seeing things and thinking that is funny?
No, not really. The other evening I got clamped in London, and I had to get on a train to go to Dartford to do the gig. It was a nightmare. I haven't been on a train in 20 years, and they've definitely taken the 20-year back step rather than a forward step. So I ended up doing 15, 16 minutes on stage about what happened that night. So I can have the ability to take a situation and try and make it funny, or just moan about it. If you just moan and rant and rave as if you're slightly bonkers, people like that.
When did you make the decision that you were going to be blue? Because it would have been easier for you. You would have had less controversy and you would have less critics if you'd have gone the way of Ken Dodd, where it's just the nice, friendly family jokes.
I wanted to be filthy. Dirty jokes make me laugh.
The filthier the better, is it?
Yeah, and funny enough, I don't tell many jokes now. I didn't tell many jokes on the last tour. I just go on and rant and rave about things. Well, the filthier the better, really.
And do they genuinely make you laugh every night? Or how do you keep that fresh? Because when you've told the same routine or the same joke night after night, how do you keep that as funny for each audience?
It's a secret. have a large vodka. Enjoy yourself.
We're going to talk a lot about your career. One of the things we must talk about is your work for the Forces, the British Forces Foundation, which you've done so much work for. And there was a great video that you did with the guys. Why is that such a passion for you?
Well, it's I suppose I got used to doing it when I was a lad, really, going out and entertaining the troops in Northern Ireland, and used to get paid as well. It was great. And it's just something I like to do. The Falklands War came at a time when I was touring the country, and I just decided to do a bit of flag waving, and the audience loved it, and I just got behind the troops, and they liked me for doing it, and it just stuck with it, really.
Very few comedians or performers generally are as brave as you. I mean, you put yourself in some serious and dangerous situations to entertain these people. Do you ever consider that?
Oh, I don't think so. The most dangerous time you ever get is when you face the paras. I don't think it's dangerous. I always find it's dangerous for the enemy when the British soldiers are about, rather than the other way around. And I don't look at it as a political thing. I did sort of ask myself the morality of going to Northern Ireland and doing jokes for British troops when it was obvious a lot of people didn't want the British troops to be there, and it was part of the British Isles, isn't it? But in the end, I thought, bugger it is an apolitical thing. I'm just going out there to do young lads that are away from home and try and cheer them up. That was the worrying thing, that suddenly you get a letter from the Provisional IRA saying, don't do any jokes over here. We don't want you coming over entertaining the troops. So that never happened, so I continued going.
What do you think your audience are attracted by with your act? Because there are very few performers that can fill arenas. There's you, there's Doddy, Billy Connolly, Eddie Izzard, Peter Kay. Can't really think of any more that can tour throughout the year and still fill big 3,000 or 4,000 seaters every single night. It's very rare. Why do you think your quality is, and why do you think people want to come and see you above anybody else?
They know they're going to get something different. They know they're going to get something controversial, and they bring their people. They bring people who've never seen me before. Hey, come listen to this guy. He's a loony.
I love the line you do in a lot of your videos about the people who have come by mistake, who have watched the Generation Game and think that you're going to be, doing big break on stage. Does that really happen, or is that just a joke?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes when I'm ranting and raving and talking about things, I see a nice sort of elderly couple, just up they get and leave quietly. God, I feel awful then. That does make me feel awful. That makes me feel dirty and cheap when it happens. I'll be truthful with you.
Do you ever fear for your life? Because when you do these jokes, there are risks, there's always a target. And you say you're apolitical in one way, but on stage, particularly in this new video, you're pointing out the faults of this country. And the great thing that you receive from watching this is you're actually right about a lot of it. But with that will come the opposition. Do you ever fear for your safety, either by the public when you're on stage or by people who might get you?
No, I take the security quite seriously, so that's all dealt with. Even at home, I take my security quite... It's not because I'm in a position to need security. It's just that I'm in a position to be able to have it, extra security. It's like having private medical insurance. It's just something that you have. The main problem is being misquoted in the papers by people with an opinion. That's your real main problem. I read something that Dominic Moen said the other day, commenting about my act, but he'd got it totally wrong. He'd got the bits wrong. And I just thought that was silly journalism, and I was a bit fed up with that. I was just upset that our journalists can't get it together a little better. They get their idea of what they want a story, a knocking story, take out all the bits that make it good and make it a knocking story, and that's what happens. That's a bit annoying.
I was talking to Ricky Tomlinson last week, who had the most disgraceful article written about him in the Mail, and they basically said that he'd abandoned his children and that he didn't love them, he didn't like them, he didn't give them any money. And I said to him, how do you cope with such a personal attack? He had given them £250,000 in the last 2 years. There's no real response for you, is there?
Get away cheap. No, you just don't make a comment. I don't read it. There was something in there about an ex-wife of mine said I was bashing her up. That's ridiculous. I just don't make a comment and I don't read it. In fact, I've stopped taking the newspapers now. I really have. I can't bear it. All this stuff about the Prince of Wales, I just can't bear it anymore. It's awful. So I'm not going to read the papers.
What I imagine must be very frustrating is with radio that we're doing now, it's live. I can't edit you. If I say something you don't like, you can interrupt me. But with print, they can write virtually anything and just allege it, and they can print it, and people will believe that. Mud will stick, and really you don't have an immediate right of reply if you have any at all, and if you do reply they could misquote that. So it's not actually you speaking, in other words. How does that affect you, particularly when it's a personal attack on your family, about your drinking, about your show or anything like that, that you don't have a right of response? That's got to frustrate you at the very least, hasn't it?
It's annoying, but it doesn't. I sleep all right, it's just annoying, and I'm with you. I think that people look at this and go, come on, this is crazy.
You've had so much success, and you mentioned Prince Charles there, and I know he's one of your biggest supporters. I mean, you've done a lot with him, and you've done a lot for him. He's not one of my supporters. He's not a supporter of me. He's a supporter of the British Forces Foundation because he's patron of it. But there again, his quotes in the papers that, Jim's friend, the Prince of Wales, really, our dear friend. I sort of spring to attention. I spoke to the Duke of York last night, and I had a chat with him. I had a drink at the bar, but I loved it. Of course, I tell people every time I'm on the phone, you never guess what I'll be having a drink with at the bar. And of course,
course, then it gets in the papers. Personal friend of the Duke of York, Jim, said.
There's a great gag you do in one of your videos where you talk about when Prince Charles rings you. Is that story true? And you were stood there in your underpants? Don't give the joke away.
It is. It's absolutely true story in the kitchen.
It's a great story. If you haven't seen Jim live and you're willing to put up with certain language and you like a good laugh, this is definitely the show for you. I want to talk about music now because you brought out this album and you kind of put yourself down earlier. You said you don't sing well, but actually you sing well enough that people like it. I mean, that's a compliment in itself, isn't it?
Anyway, it keeps selling out. You can't get it anywhere. I think it was because Greg Lake produced it and he's a bit of a genius. Drove us all mad, I have to say. Bit of a workaholic, but it's just a few old songs I like to do. And Greg said, pick some songs that have a meaning, that have a point, not just ones you can sing well. The reason I do them on stage is because you can use lights. You can't really light jokes, and I like doing lighting things and making people go ooh, and use a good band. So that's the only reason I do them, really. I'd never go on and sing to a backing track, or just go and sing with a bare stage, or never sing without lights. You know, it's all part of the show. I don't particularly enjoy it, but it's part of the show. People like it.
Talking about gags and lights, there's one gag you do which we can't do on this programme, but I just love the one which you do in the dark and they're up the ladder. This is a story joke that probably goes on for about 24 hours.
I know, yeah. That's been around for years, that joke. It keeps changing, especially if I've had a few on stage and the band get me at it. It's a definite... I only did that joke in the dark because I had to have a dark setting on stage so I could set something up, and it sort of stayed in the dark. I like that joke, it's good. I wrote it for Jethro originally. I got it together for Jethro, but it was too complicated for him. He couldn't do it. Kept spitting his cider out.
In terms of the drinking side of it, I mean, is this occupational now, or you just do it for a laugh? How is it coping with drink now? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm all right. Mm.
I'm glad about that because I like to think of...
I was all right with it before. It was all the people around me I was abusing. They were the ones.
The thing about someone like you is we see you on stage, and I was saying this to someone earlier, that you are so funny, and I'd hate to think that you weren't happy. Are you happy in yourself now?
I don't think there is happy. I think there's happier than you were, or unhappier than you were. I don't think you ever get to the stage happy. I think that's a bit silly, that. It's for kids, that. Happy.
Content, then, how about that?
Oh, pretty content. Yeah, I'm 50 now, or in a minute, and... yeah, just annoying. I get annoyed with things. I despair, the rotten bloody press and the awful television and stuff like that, and the country's going to the dogs. I get frustrated, but I get it out of my system on stage, you know, especially if you get clamped. What a night that was.
Can you imagine, though, if you didn't have this place to vent your thoughts? I mean, what would you do? You'd go insane, wouldn't you?
No, I'd go fishing.
So it's either going on stage to 3,000 people and talking about it, or go fishing?
Yeah, that's right.
Do you talk to the fish?
No, I don't talk to the fish. I sit there and catch sometimes nothing at all.
But it doesn't matter?
No, it doesn't matter. I'm out the way. Yeah, well, it does matter because I tend to not go fishing to relax. I tend to go fishing to catch fish. And if I can't catch them, there's something wrong, and then I'll sort of walk around the lake and I'll do all silly, ridiculous stuff and stay there till I catch them for days on end, coming up freezing.
Is that a good place to think of jokes?
I don't do jokes. I go on and talk about current events. I'll go on and talk tonight about my mate who gets words wrong. Said to me, I see all them soldiers today walking past the epitaph. God. So I'll mention that and that'll get me going. He did. Stucky said, hello, son. I'm just watching them soldiers walk past the epitaph. He's the one that said to me, there's a blonde bird in the front row. You can't miss her. She's got jet blonde hair.
I like that.
Seriously.
With what you do, is it trusting your mind? Is that when you become really good? I was talking to a comedian once who said you can't do it unless you trust that the next thing's going to be there, because if you worry about it, you won't be funny. Is that what it's about, trusting that you're confident with the act?
I don't know, that sounds a bit complicated. The act, really, once you've done it for a couple of days on a sort of a new bit, once you've got a new bit together, it basically runs on rails then. You can drag away from one bit. I mean, the first couple of weeks of this, because I had to stick in a format, vote for Jim, it had to revolve around what I would do to the country. I really used to get myself in a bit of a flap, but now I'm quite relaxed about it.
And of course, if you didn't get a chance to see Jim live this year touring the country, he's brought it out on DVD and video for Christmas, so it's in your shops now. Also, you're doing pantomime at the moment. Tell us where you're at.
That's in Southampton. I'm doing a production called Aladdin. I'm playing Aladdin. And Yeah, the music's by Electric Light Orchestra and things, and it's very lavish. And I wanted to have an Oriental cast as well, which upset certain people. Well, Aladdin is about an Oriental story. Well, the pantomime version of it is really about the Middle East, but I've got a Japanese emperor who can't speak English very well. I've got a Thailand bodyguard for the emperor, and I've got 9 dancers that are what one would say of Oriental appearance.
I can't wait for the headlines. I can't wait to see what they'll say about that. Who can imagine? And then next year...
chink off the old block, the some will say, won't it? Something horribly jingoistic, which I'll get the blame for.
No, you've given them that. You shouldn't have helped them along with that.
Doesn't matter, they would have thought of it.
Next year, you're going to do Cinderella with a big S. A big S. And this is for the adults. So you've got 2 choices. You can either see the children's version or the mucky version. And then TV-wise, you're going to be doing Commercial Breakdown. Are you enjoying that?
Yeah, it was good fun looking at all the old the commercials. Were very, very funny. I don't know how they put them together. They were hysterical. My favourite one is of Roberto Carlos in a Coca-Cola advert, or a Pepsi. I don't know which one it was, but watch out for that in Japan. It's fantastic.
That's on your screen soon. And very finally, what would you like to do next? We need you back on a show like Generation Game where we can see your personality. Is there anything in the pipeline? Would you like to do anything more as big as that on telly?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of what I want to do, because the people at the television centre on ITV and Lorraine, who runs BBC One down there, they have their agenda of what people want to watch, and they don't just make that up, you know. They have all their research and do stuff. And I was the Saturday night at 6 o'clock, and now I'm not Saturday night at 6 o'clock, and although Lorraine Hegarty wants to concentrate on me doing the stand-up stuff, which I'll be doing 4 shows again next year, late at night. So maybe I'll just stick at doing that for a while until things change, you know. People have to reinvent themselves and one day. I mean, I'd like to do the Generation Game at 10:30, but again, it's too expensive to do at that time of night. Still, there you go.